Good morning, friends, and welcome to the Biblical Perspective for the very first week of April 2022. Come join me as we look at some things that have been happening this past week, and we're going to talk about on the heels of that message I did last week about the green horse riding. We're going to talk about the key elements of green idolatry today. We're only going to scratch the surface of that, but we're going to touch on four things that I think you need to hear. We're going to talk about, ladies, why your makeup may or may not be acceptable these days. And then we're going to get to a news item in the very last one that was not covered in the mainstream media this week, but should have been at the headlines. And many of the news feeds that were out there just didn't show up. So stick around for that one right at the end. But first of all, let's talk about what this green idolatry looks like in these days, because this is exactly what was prophesied for the last days before Jesus would return again. And one of the first things you're going to notice about green idolatry is all the definitions are changing. Yes, the definitions are changing. Everything that was right is now wrong. Everything that was wrong is now right. Everything is upside down. You can read a full list of this at the end of Romans chapter 1 when you see what happens when a society or civilization plummets down into the depths when they reject God and His Word. This is the apostasy, the great apostasy, which basically is a rejection of God, His Word, and His laws. That's why we can redefine everything, whether it's from gender to sin, or is there such a thing as sin? And almost everything is up for grabs. And it's whatever you want it to be, because ultimately now you are in charge. You are really God. So the changing definitions are confusing enough, but the changing perceptions are also very troubling, because in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, Paul reveals that those in these last days are going to believe the lie. So lies are going to become so powerful that there's an ultimate large lie behind all of that, and people are going to just believe it. You'd say, oh, that's impossible. Folks can't believe those kind of things. No, folks aren't going to believe you if you're just lying to their face. I want to send you to something. If you haven't seen it already, chase this down. It's on YouTube and other channels. Look up Jesse Waters and find out what people are actually believing. He quotes a poll, a very extensive poll that was done by YouGov, where it talked about percentages. What do people believe certain things? Percentage makeup of races, for example, in the United States, percentage of annual income. This blew my mind. What percentage of people in the United States make over $500,000 a year, $500,000 a year? Folks in the poll thought it was about 26%. In reality, it's only 1%. What about left-handed people? How many folks are left-handed? Well, the folks in the poll thought 34% of all people are left-handed. Really, it's only about 11%. Yes, like my daughter Libby being one of those. And how many people are vegan or vegetarian? The folks in the poll thought surely almost a third of us are, about 30%. Really, it's only 5%. And there are several things that go along with that. We'll hit one of those, another one of those later. But he just demonstrated what media does to give you certain impressions, how they put together commercials and news stories and other things will give you false facts. What you're supposed to believe are facts, but really are just fake news. And they'll have you believing a lie before you know it. So changing perceptions are all a part of this. Matter of fact, they're so much a part of this that our folks now believe that, according to the poll, that, some 21% of our population must be transgender. In reality, it's 1% or less, yet it's so affected us that Disney has now announced that they will no longer address people as greetings, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Now, that's banned language at Disney for when they introduce things. Instead, they have to use something generic like, hello, everybody. I mean, really. And so this is one of those things that are a part of the list of key elements of the new green idolatry, the new green religion that you have to get in on. That's why you see some of these politicians that are out in left field on this stuff refusing to call mothers. Instead, they are birthing people, a brand new term that's been pulled up because of this new green idolatry that's out there. Well, there's something else that's very important as we get into this green idolatry. Number 3 is that you have to be involved in Mother Earth worship. You got to realize that the ultimate goal, above all else, is to save the planet. And if you can't save the planet, then, oh my goodness, what's the use? Because we're all just going to die. They told us a few years ago, within 10 years, we're all dead. We saw Greta Thunberg just stand up and berate all of us adults because we are destroying the planet. We're destroying her world and her future, and all she can really do is cry and whine and complain. And we think this isn't having an effect. You look at people like that and you think, oh, no one would believe that. Oh, thousands upon thousands of them believed it and marched on Washington here a couple of weeks ago and demanded that President Biden declare a climate emergency and stop the production of all fossil fuels. Now, for some green-headed monsters, that may seem like the thing to do. You just don't realize that it would bring civilization to a complete stop. It would destroy your ability to even not just travel, but enjoy most of the products that you take for granted each and every day. You see, from the average barrel of oil that comes out of the ground, only half of it even goes for fuel and vehicles that we need to get around. And if you think there are electric cars just waiting for you to buy out there, you're going to be sorely disappointed when you not only look and discover there aren't that many here. Now, China seems to have plenty of them, but we don't have them in the United States. Not only are they not here, but even their very production and sustainability is still based on a fossil fuel culture. So, even operating them is not something that's going to take place without the use of fossil fuels. Yet we've got folks saying, oh, we've got to shut this down. Well, where did they get that from? Well, Joe Biden in his own campaign speeches where he promised he was going to eliminate the fossil fuel industry. Well, a lot of folks weren't paying much attention to that. They were too busy listening to all the anti-Trump rhetoric that somehow got people to vote for Biden because they thought he was the compassionate old grandpa that wouldn't do much of anything to mess up their movements when all of a sudden now we realize that the surging, flying inflation and crises around the world are all based on mistakes that come from the White House, the place of governance in the most powerful nation in the free world, at least. And so as we watch this collapse all around us, we keep thinking, why are these things happening? It's not like we weren't told they would happen. And those folks that were marching on Washington were just asking President Biden to fulfill his campaign promise. He said he was going to get rid of oil. Well, let's see how you're going to do that. And if you're going to do it, it's going to affect almost everything that we use. And for some of you ladies who think it doesn't have anything to do with you, oh, listen, friends, from things like your toothpaste to the plastic Tupperware that you use right down to your makeup, yes, petroleum products are used in so much of what we have as a part of our everyday life. Now, I've got here a tube of mascara that comes from my wife's collection. This is a L'Oreal, so I don't know. This may be bad makeup. I don't know. But, when you go into the Kroger, they don't just have a section that says good makeup and bad makeup, do they? Instead, it's just, about how much you want to spend, which one's on sale and all this, and what's going to do which one is going to give you the objective, to make you look the best for the least amount of money and still not break you out into hives. But you know what? I watched an interesting ad that's popping up all over the internet this past week that seems to indicate that, no, if you really want the right kind of makeup, ladies, you've got to be on board with the new green movement, the new green religion. And quickly, in a very short commercial, a girl is holding up her cell phone. You can tell it's starting with a selfie, and she begins by saying, "Coming to you fresh-faced from home." well, if I'm coming from home, why do I need makeup on? Oh, no, look, you may be at home, but you need to put your makeup on so you'll look good in the mirror for yourself, okay? Now, why are you home? It used to be because of a pandemic. Now it's because gas prices are so high you can't afford to travel anymore. So all that remote work that we trained you on back in 2020, now it's the time to really utilize that because you can't afford to put gas in your car anymore. But she begins to advertise CoverGirl's Lash Blast Mascara. And she quickly hits the points that make it absolutely necessary for you to buy this product. Listen to the points. Clean formula. Clean formula. Wait a minute, you mean my old mascara is dirty? Oh my goodness, I don't want to have something dirty on my eyes. Okay, secondly, it's cruelty-free. Cruelty-free. Has your mascara been abusing you? How is it that mascara can be cruel? Oh no, what they're saying is sometimes companies with various experiments and other things they do, they use animals and treat them badly so they can discover how to make good mascara for you. I'm not sure how those two could connect, but apparently they do. So if you want the cruelty-free mascara, you've got to buy this one. Then it says vegan. How is mascara vegan? I mean, vegan by definition is a person who doesn't eat any food derived from animals. Oh, but there's an extension of that, which says that they don't use animal products. Oh, so if you're a vegan, you can be happy that no animal products are used in your mascara. Got to make sure you check off that box. And then finally, she says, well, it works for me. It works for the planet. Did you know you can have mascara that works for the planet? I mean, you can't make this stuff up, folks. These are the talking points now to try to get you to buy the new mascara. The one that is safe for the planet. If you really want to worship Mother Earth and make sure you save her, you got to make sure the stuff you put on your eyes is made the right way. And this one, this CoverGirl, checks all the good boxes. Oh, friends, how far are we willing to go? Are we willing to go far enough to completely bring our civilization to a standstill to somehow please the green new religion? But that's exactly what we're being told we must do. And when you say we're going to stop using petroleum products, you have no idea what putting on those brakes would do. To throw us back to the 1800s, we would basically be back on horseback or riding our bicycles everywhere we go. If you think there are enough chips out there to electrify everything, you are living in La La Land. And guess what? The people who control the chip production these days are not in the United States of America. They are in other countries. And some of the very elements like nickel and neon that are necessary for those chip production processes to continue come from strange places like Ukraine. And so, we're in a world of hurt today, but people are just living out in some social utopia where they think we can just make everything green and somehow we're going to survive. It'll be better for the whole planet. Well, guess what, folks? The sad reality is you are living in a fantasy land that can't happen. That's why the result of that green kingdom, the end of it, is that it's going to spread famine, death, and destruction, just as it was prophesied in the book of Revelation. But the final point I want to talk about this morning, number 4, is the one where we are not seeing this covered when it should be at the front headlines of every newspaper and every news feed in the world. And that's what's going on in Israel. Because the war in Ukraine seems to be at the forefront, we're talking about what Vladimir Putin is doing to the Ukrainian people, how they are fighting back, and how they even attacked Russia this past week, and people clapped and cheered. Well, hang on. What about what Russia's saying in Israel? You see, right now, that's just not even being considered. While the enemies of Israel, the terrorist organizations that are surrounding Israel, get ready for even more and more attacks and getting ready for their ultimate push to destroy the nation of Israel, no one seems to be paying attention. But this past week, the Russians were paying attention. You might remember they've a couple times stated this year that they're growing impatient with Israel's airstrikes into Syria, which they have to continue to destroy those terrorist bases and the Iranian troops and front bases that are being set up right across from Israel's border. If the Russians aren't going to do anything about it, they're right there in Syria, then the Israelis are going to have the freedom to go stop these people. It's basic self-defense. But this week, Alexander Asimov said this: Israel is provoking Russia to react. Every time they defend themselves against these folks in Syria, he says now Israel is just provoking Russia to react. It sounds like they are getting ready. He's the ambassador of Russia to Syria. It sounds like they are getting ready for a reaction themselves. If Putin can attack Ukraine, then why can't he do something to stop these Israelis from attacking inside Syria? Syria is one of their allies. Russia came to Syria's aid to keep the Syrian dictator in power. I mean, they are there at the behest of the Syrian government. What can they do about this? They've also formed a peace treaty with Iran and are actually brokering this sad nuclear deal between the United States and Iran that's going to allow them to keep making enriched uranium and get ready to have the nuclear weapons that they want to use against Israel and maybe even the United States. It sounds like a nightmare scenario, but it's happening right in front of our eyes. When he says Israel is now provoking Russia to react by striking these Iranian and terrorist targets in Syria, then they're saying that Israel, you have no right to stop all these PGMs, which is the acronym for the precision-guided missiles that Iran is now sending and putting in place all around Israel so that ultimately, when the day comes, they can send thousands of rockets and missiles guided to specific targets, not like some of those that Hamas has been sending up before that just kind of go up in the air and hit wherever, but instead precision-guided missiles that will seek out certain targets. And there's only so many that the Iron Dome can protect Israel from. And as they continue to line these up, we're being told by the Russians now that Israel, you can't stop and defend against these things. You can't stop the trail of these weapons coming in, and we're not going to stop it. You're just provoking us. You poke the bear and see what happens. You see what happened to Ukraine, don't you? You see what happened when NATO dared to say that we might bring Ukraine in. I mean, we will come after you. So the threats are very real. What is going to happen? And why is it happening now? Well, as Eric Steckelbeck pointed out this week, it's the Afghanistan effect. The world has seen how weak and powerless this administration in the United States is, and that they are backing off from anything meaningful. We were willing to surrender all the Afghan women to this medieval group of terrorists, the Taliban, that now is running Afghanistan, to leave many of our own citizens behind enemy lines. We have watched our civilization completely collapse around our position in the world. No longer defender of the free world, but instead just to say, hey, whatever you guys want to do is just fine. And the folks who are wicked in this world have seen that it's time for them to take advantage of that. So this Afghanistan effect is going to continue to move forward in the world. I would encourage you to look at the Watchman channel and pick up the interview by Michael Oren, the former ambassador to the U.S. from Israel, that he did with Eric Steckelbeck this week, as he begins to describe what a dangerous position we have put the entire world in by this remarkable weakness that's now being portrayed by the United States. Is it any wonder that we have a war going on in a couple of different places in the world, and more perhaps at the doorstep, when we've decided we're just going to default, back off, and consider more important things that we need to be dealing with? You see, at the top of the headlines in the United States this week are the fact that Joe Biden, with the stroke of a pen, declared that lynching is now a hate crime. Well, lynching's a crime anyhow. You should prosecute anybody that lynches someone. But guess what? We haven't had any lynchings in the United States in decades. but this was your priority. One of your priorities is figuring out how to have maternity flight suits for female pilots of fighter jets. Really? This is at the top? And to figure out how you can make transgender soldiers comfortable within our armed services while you cut back the military budgets to the point that our Navy, our Air Force, and our armed forces will be shrinking in the coming year in the face of all these things going on in the world. Friends, what is this doing? Well, it's setting up the exact scenario that Scripture predicted for the end times. You know, a generation ago, people said, how could these things happen with the United States at the helm of the free world? This could never happen. These things predicted in the Bible must just be fake. You know, it can't be true because the United States would never let anything like this happen. Yet you and I have lived to see the time where the United States has fallen so far off the left cliff into this green idolatry that they don't even see what's going on in the world, nor do they care. Well, that's a depressing way to start the week as we start on this Saturday, start the month of April. But let me tell you how you can hang in there through all of this. I read a devotional from Will Graham this morning entitled, Remember Your First Love. From Revelation chapter 2, we saw these words, Nevertheless, I have this against you, that you've left your first love. Remember, therefore, from where you have fallen. Repent and do the first works, or else I'll come to you and quickly remove your lampstand from its place, unless you repent. He has a beautiful devotional in his book entitled Redeemed, Devotions for the Longing Soul, about remembering your first love, getting back to that relationship with Jesus and how it will carry you through all the difficulties of life. Matter of fact, he said, these folks were admonished for one thing. They had forgotten their first love. They were going through the motions, but had lost that passion that had gripped them and driven them to serve God and others. You know, the same could possibly be said about you. You may be floating through life with the hope of eternity, but without the passion of the Savior. You may get more excited about a mundane building project than you do about the peace that passes all understanding. So today I ask you to remember your first love. Remember when you surrendered your life to Christ and rekindle that relationship with Him. And I would say as you rekindle that relationship with Christ, you'll find that He will give you the strength and the perspective to take all of these things that are flying at us from so many different directions. It's almost like it turns our brain to jelly. He'll allow you to take all those things, put them in a biblical perspective, and with joy carry on until Jesus comes. Well, that's all my ranting and raving for the day. I hope you'll enjoy your week and join us each and every weekday as we wake up in the Word. Tomorrow, go to church somewhere. Worship the Lord in spirit and truth with God's people personally if you at all can. And if you can't, join us tomorrow with our message from right here at First Baptist Church of Winsboro, South Carolina. God bless you.